I'm Ben Hoefel. As Kayla was saying, I lead our digital sales and service stream at Jetstar Airways. So Jetstar, for those who don't know, we're the low-cost airline arm of Qantas Airways, primarily based here in Australia, but also with domestic operations in New Zealand. And we also have some partnership operations in Japan, Jetstar Japan, and Singapore, Jetstar Asia as well. So we are one of the largest low-cost carriers operating in the Asia Pacific region. We've been around for 16 years now, many of them with these two companies that have now come together happily for us. Myself, I've been in the company about 4 years now. Initially, I was running discreetly personalization, optimization, our customer data management function. So heavy focus on what we were doing with Boxever and the team there. As we're kind of recovering from the pandemic, as with everyone, there's probably been a bit of changes in the company. So we've made the decision to kind of join what we were doing in our channels and experience with what we were doing in experimentation and data to try and really make sure that data is at the forefront of all of our experiences going forward, rather than trying to retrofit a personalized experience over a baseline or core experience in the channels.
Thanks, Ben. And I want to give everyone some kind of insight today into kind of, what Jetstar have done and kind of how you've delivered personalization and what you're doing. But kind of take us back a little bit to when you first became a customer. And I know that was kind of, roughly around when you started at Jetstar. But what triggered Jetstar really to go out into the market, look for a platform, and also, going back even further, I think, obviously you're a Sitecore CMS customer as well. Kind of tell us a bit about that history as well, if you can.
Yeah, sure. So I think the main reason why we were pursuing personalization, because that's what Boxever was focusing on back then, was there was growing concentration and competitiveness of OTAs entering the Australian market, which is our bread and butter. And given they will always have larger marketing budgets than what we would ever have as a low-cost airline, it's how do we compete and make sure that we keep our brand presence strong and we're driving traffic directly to our website, because that's how we are profitable as a low-cost airline, is by having ownership of that customer relationship and being able to make sure the customers come to jetstar.com to book as opposed through other channels. Given we couldn't go and spend as much on above-the-line classical marketing that we were seeing the OTAs doing, we thought we could form ways in which we could better engage with our customers, particularly in upper funnel exercises, so largely marketing and sales into our booking flow, or commerce engine, I guess you would generally call. And a selection of the market, or looking at the market at the time, it was still very emerging. Boxever was probably the most innovative player at the time in kind of thinking forward in what would eventually become a more common term with CDPs. Nothing like that existed historically. A lot of the other players, and largely still are taking what was a front-end testing tool and trying to make that a personalization engine. So being able to join data and get the performance of having that at hand, being able to build out decision processes and build out variants on those decision processes and execute them across any channel was a key selling point for us. And also the history of Boxever. The guys were from primarily airline-based backgrounds, so they got our business, and clearly Boxever at the time was pitched more towards our industry before it expanded into the other industries it went to. So that's why we picked Boxever, and that's kind of why we went down the path of personalization. Sitecore has been around for over 10 years. I actually asked people who've been at Jetstar far longer than me, clearly, and no one can actually remember exactly when Sitecore was deployed. That's how long it's been around. Similar sort of process. Jetstar was starting to grow as an airline. We had that, we need to grow up. We're not just a little company with 5 planes anymore. We've got 77. How the hell will we start to run an enterprise-based website? And so that journey was, over 10 years ago, as the company was looking to expand its direct presence again in terms of making sure that we were driving that direct strategy, and how could we support the multilingual presence that we were building as well, particularly in those Asian markets that I mentioned earlier.
Thanks. And Dave, obviously, I wasn't around in Boxever when Jetstar signed as a customer, but you definitely were. What do you remember around what they wanted to achieve back then? I know since I've been involved with Jetstar, they've been one of our more innovative customers. But what's your particular recollection of kind of challenges they kind of gave us back then? You're on mute, I think, Dave.
Sorry, guys. They were one of our first customers, right? And from my perspective, we had a very probably ambitious vision for the airline industry at the time, and Jetstar was one of the few customers who really got it straight away. And as we thought about how we were going to help them, drive better conversion on the website, and a lot of customers were at the time were thinking about just web only, but Jetstar were thinking about email, service, all of these other channels that it was great to hear them. One of the things that Jetstar was always really good at was they would always share their vision and strategy for the upcoming year or years, and to see their presentation of what they were trying to do, it was like we were writing our sales deck, and so I think there was a great meeting of the minds in terms of what we were trying to do, and at the time when it was 2014, maybe 2014, 2015, when Jetstar really got going, we worked together on kind of key strategic roadmap items as well. So, Jetstar have been a huge part of the Box Ever story, and it's quite a distance from Dublin, but I've always enjoyed meeting the team in Melbourne when the opportunities arose.
So Ben, kind of coming a little bit more up to date then, kind of how is Box Ever used and positioned in the organization today? Is it marketing only, or you're going across the various areas of the business? How do you guys then kind of ideate and decide what it is you're going to do?
Yeah. No, it's broader than just marketing. So probably in terms of user groups, it's still primarily within our digital function more so than our marketing function, though we're working on expanding that with how the software has evolved over time. But it would be the likes of content producers and web developers and analysts, analytics folk that would be primarily using it. We've really put it through its paces over the time we've had it. And I think my advice, if you were saying, well, where would you begin, is the stuff that you can get straight out of the box of Box Ever. So the very beginning was really tagging up some of those key events that were happening on our site so that we could run basic triggers and connect web and email. And that still is one of the most successful things we do in Box Ever. It's so simple to say someone's abandoned the car, follow up with an email, follow up and try to bring them back into the funnel. And it's still one of the most successful things. Likewise, being to aggregate some of the data that you get from web itself. So urgency messaging on how many people are viewing this flight in X period of time to try and stimulate those conversion, and other similar things where you're just being a bit of a parrot to the customer. So, the recent search, just making it more convenient for customers to get back into our funnel and to pick up where they left off. And that's the easiest stuff to do. It doesn't sound as sexy as some of the other stuff I'll talk to, but it still works, and it's still one of the biggest money spinners for us. When we kind of had to turn everything off with the pandemic, they were the first things that came back online because we knew that they work and they were simple to get up and running and to prove value. The way that we've generally approached what we would do is we would run what we class as a design sprint. So we try to do a cross-functional workshop across our sort of product teams, our marketing teams, the customer team, if it's a service-based initiative, and our digital development and design teams as well. And that's really for us to try and frame a customer or business problem, and for the team to work on developing hypotheses of how we might look to solve this problem. What we then aim to do is think about what would be the simplest way to test how we would solve that for a customer, so that we could then test that into market. And we are very big avid testers. So it isn't just about dumping straight into personalization. It is about testing everything we put on our website before we commit it to the code base. And we would probably be running about 40 odd optimization tests a week on average. So it's pretty heavy usage. From those test results, we're able to determine whether the hypothesis was proven or not, and therefore whether we should continue to scale that investment, whether we should go deeper in the data and the results. So that's how optimization becomes personalization. I didn't win with everyone, but here's a segment where it is winning. Let's target them with a specific experience going forward. Or if the hypothesis doesn't work, why not? Like, what were the other factors and how do we reframe what that idea is? And the benefit of doing it that way, and the trick is making sure that you're not building your end state paradise solution, but really the simplest way to prove the customer behavior means that you can have more confidence in the investments that you're having. And as you're trying to build buy-in from your other stakeholders in the business, you've got empirical data that proves why it works. Some of the more advanced features that we've done, so along with the basic, what I call customization, that parity sort of use cases, action, reaction, we kind of do a series of segmented based use cases. So where we've built segments on likely, next best, ancillary products. So all of those ancillaries we sell as an airline, check baggage, seat selection, etc., based on customers like the booking that we're seeing. And so how can we upsell? And then we've even ventured into ML and advanced AI. So what's the propensity for each of our known customers to book a particular destination? How do we feed that through Voxever into our email marketing and into the web when they visit? Who would most likely want to take a business class upgrade if we've got capacity that's spare when the flight's about to take off, etc.? How do we feed them into the campaigns? All of them have proven their value tenfold over. And I think that was really assuring. I'm sure everyone has gone through a lot of soul searching with the pandemic and trying to reflect on what's still important and what does a business continue to invest in. And I think it's really happy for me and my team, obviously, that it wasn't even a decision. It wasn't whether we should continue using data and personalization at Jetstar. It's how do we start the machine again, and how do we learn from what we weren't doing so well last time as we come back as a team as well.
Cool. And how do you, how in Jetstar, kind of talking about that, how do you make that decision between the kind of business objectives you're trying to achieve and also what you may see as kind of, improving the customer experience and the kind of the customer's objectives? How do you meet that balance when you're kind of thinking about these things?
Yeah. I think the first thing is being really solid on what's the metrics that you're trying to test for. So how do you define success itself, and both primary and secondary? Yeah. So it's easy to simply take conversion as what your success metric is. But if we were testing how easy is it for a customer to start a search, a flight search on our site, conversion is so far down the funnel that whatever's happening down there is being influenced by so many other things. So how do we break up that funnel to understand, well, actually the role of this test is to get someone from one point to the next point, and then from that point to the next point, and so on and so forth. If we're seeing less drop off in that funnel, we're seeing less time on site as people are going through it, we know the experience is going up because it's becoming more convenient and faster for the customer. And at the end state, we should start to see that uplift of conversion as we're not getting in the way in barriers. It's not to say we still don't have trade-off discussions across our sort of steer code, and it is again that cross-functional steer code that reviews all of the tests that we do each week and each month to kind of make those decisions as well. A great example, we actually tested. So we have a sponsorship partnership with World Vision. We ask every customer at the end of our booking flow, would you like to make a donation to World Vision as part of that? And we actually tested, does our conversion go up if we don't ask for donations? The answer was it actually did. Yeah, as a business, we didn't think that was a good thing. We are trying to do a social good here. And that was one where actually we traded off conversion and revenue for we're trying to help out. And at least what it helped us do as well is understand, well, what contribution are we truly making to that remit, not just in terms of what customers are donating, but what the business is, in a sense, donating as well by having that there. But likewise, we have trade-offs of, it's very easy to convert someone on a fare and get them not to buy any of the upsells, but we need those to make a profit. So how do we just balance out our fare yield and our ancillary margins as well?
And Dave, obviously you work across the base of our customers and have done for many years. I mean, the way Jetstar is working has always seemed, fairly sophisticated to me. They've always seemed fairly advanced in terms of kind of, how they look at things. And as you said yourself, there's a real kind of meeting of the minds, I think, in terms of what they do. What do you think that kind of other customers can gain from kind of looking at the way Jetstar are doing things in the personalization space?
I think a couple of things that Jetstar do really well, and I don't want to speak for you, Ben, but first is that kind of test first approach, that kind of experiment with things and prove that it's working. So that starts small, test it, validate that it's working, and then scale it is something that Jetstar was one of the first customers we'd seen do that. Now, over time, we've seen many of our customers kind of adopt that approach, and it's our recommended approach now. So, build your backlog of hypotheses, build a scalable and cost-effective way to test those hypotheses. And then as you find things that are working, or you validate things that you thought were working or not, then that becomes something that you might want to build into the solution. And kind of very aligned with how we kind of evolved our platform over time was that, we wanted to be able to enable agile, primarily web-based testing. So quick deployment of tag, quick deployment of tests, testing something on the front end. And then if you get to a point where, I've discovered that this pricing strategy is delivering, better attachment rates or better conversion rates or better average basket values, or this particular type of content for this segment is working effectively, how could I scale that across channels? And as you guys know, scaling across channels means deeper integrations, probably integrating via APIs, which can potentially be a little bit more costly, but ultimately more robust. And so that whole kind of factory mindset of getting ideation, cull the losers, promote the winners, and go to the next stage was something that I thought Jetstar kind of had in their DNA from the outset. And we certainly learned a lot from the operating model. One other thing that I think Jetstar did very early is they brought in an agency to work with them as well, very best of breed, who were very focused on optimization and MarTech, kind of extracting value from MarTech solutions. We working with those guys, they brought a lot of kind of best of breed thinking, and similarly kind of start small, scale type mindsets. And so those things were the agency, the Lumery in Melbourne that Jetstar worked with at the time, again, was hugely influential in terms of how we were thinking about moving our product forward, because it's not just a technology problem, right? Part of it's the data and the technology infrastructure, and a huge part of it then is the culture, the strategy, the people, the process that's layered on top. And I think Jetstar kind of nailed that early on to get the most value out of technology platforms like BoxEver.
Thanks, Dave. And Ben, kind of looking forward then, as you said, coming out of COVID, some parts of the world, and I know the NZ region is in and out of lockdown regularly at the moment. But kind of what's next on your big roadmap for the kind of personalization space? Well, what are your big bets for the year?
Yeah. Probably the biggest bet for us is it's not even rebuild it, it's launching a new Jetstar app. So our app channel has been probably a bit unloved in the time that I've worked here. And rather than try to fix that, we're actually thinking it's probably better to start with something new. And what we're trying to do there, and I think this is where it works really well with the roadmap that Dave and the team were taking us through earlier, because that's where we've been quite successful with data and personalization and testing. We haven't been as good with the content, and we are considering using or moving towards Content Hub as opposed to XM to help us power that. That new app gives us, I guess, a safe space. Like in our traditional website, it's a multi-billion-dollar channel. If we want to be really audacious, you can imagine there's a lot of people who have a bit of hesitancy with some of our ideas. But when we're talking with a new channel with a subset of customers, as it initially launched to, that means that some of these far out there ideas in how we might look to inspire and engage with customers when they're not traveling, which is the issue for an airline. Yeah, we don't generally hear from a customer until they've actually become aware they want to go somewhere and when they want to go and where it is they want to go. How do we actually maintain some sort of relationship with them when they're not traveling? And that's where content can really help us in playing a role. And how do we surface the best and most personalized content for them that's relevant at that start of their journey? How do we get better with the way they search and learn about the way they search to make that search experience more interactive? So again, rather than being really explicit, A to B on these dates with this many people, actually tell me how I can escape Melbourne's cold and get somewhere sunnier and warmer, and what's the price and when should I travel, etc. And you can start to bring the worlds of content and commerce together more clearly. And then long tail, how do we better support that customer throughout their journey as well, which is going to have a lot of personalized triggered messaging that not just time to go to your gate and the boring sort of things you kind of expect to an airline, but how can we communicate it in a way that reduces the traveler's anxiety whilst increasing their anticipation? So how can we talk about things that inevitably do go wrong when you travel in a way that makes sure that that customer feels informed, in control, and that we've got their back?
Thank you. And Ben, as a customer of both platforms going forward, and obviously you've just heard from Dave on the roadmap, kind of last question, I guess for me, given the time, but what are you hoping comes out of that kind of roadmap and kind of the merging and the bringing together of the two organizations?
Yeah, I think we're definitely keen on probably two main things. Is as Boxlever and the Content Hub sort of world start to come together, making it easier for us to surface the right content as we're building out our decisions for the execution, rather than kind of copy and pasting KVPs from XM into Boxlever and trying to maintain that consistency can be a bit of a challenge. The second one is we are really keen in going fully headless as well. So we really, we have a lean machine in Jetstar as a low-cost carrier. We want to try to get the most out of the limited developer resources we have. Being able to move to our own sort of React base, as we've chosen application base, rather than being tied to particular monolithic applications, will probably help us go further into the future. And so we're seeing a headless option where we focus on building experiences and applications that deliver them, rather than all the infrastructure and all of those other pieces will really fitten us up and help us get further faster as well.